All right, let me give you an update on something that happened yesterday. Do you remember the Russian state television employee that stormed onto the set during a live broadcast on Russian news? She was, we reported yesterday, lost. Nobody could find her. Where did I put that protester? Speculation was that she had been disappeared. She was not allowed to see her attorney. Her attorney had no idea where she was. All of the police stations said, no, we didn't. She's not here. Well, she just spoke out in a video recorded outside of a courtroom. She said, I just spent 2 days without sleep. I wasn't allowed to contact my relatives or people close to me. She was not allowed access, I'm quoting her, to any legal representation, so I was fairly in a difficult position, end quote. Yeah, she was. Here's what she did. She got on Channel 1 in Moscow, and she went right behind the anchor of a very popular news show, and she was yelling, "Stop the war." She held up a sign that said, "They're lying to you here." She had said that she had engaged in Kremlin propaganda, and she felt horrible about it and deeply ashamed. Well, after 2 days of not being able to sleep, the Russian government has decided that she should be charged with organizing an unauthorized public event, and she was fined $273. Now you think, that doesn't sound so bad. Yeah, well, she's also going to be charged with false information. I don't know exactly what the false information was. They're lying to you. Kremlin propaganda. Remember, there was at least the beginning. I don't know about it now, but towards the beginning, there were large swaths of the population that only were getting their news from the Kremlin and from the Moscow news that didn't even know there was a war going on.
Well, you can't even say that. You can't. That might be what the false information is, according to the Kremlin. You're not allowed to call it a war. You have to call it a special military operation.
Yeah, well, that she's facing now 15 years for doing that. Now, here in America, is our media just stupid, or do they not want to talk and warn you about what's coming on a couple of things? We are headed for a major food shortage all around the world, and we are not going to be left out of it. Because of the invasion by Russia in Ukraine, the global supply chains for food is going to cause a global crisis that will affect millions of people. Here's why it's going to affect us. The agricultural mayhem that's going to happen here in the United States is off the charts. First of all, Russia and Ukraine, and I don't know when they got this instead of us, but Russia and Ukraine is known as the breadbasket of the world. Wasn't that us? Wasn't that our farmers? When did we stop being the breadbasket of the world? Both countries are responsible for 1/4 of the international wheat trade, 1/5 of corn, and 12% of all calories traded globally. Look at what we're facing with cutting off 12%, or not even that, 8% of our oil. Look at what's happening with gas prices. If you think that's not coming with food, you're mistaken. One of the main things that we also get from Russia and Ukraine, not just food supplies around the rest of the world, but we have access to fertilizer. And fertilizer, Russia has banned the exports of that. This is going to choke off our farmers. Our farmers in the South are now saying they can't get fertilizer. And they're stockpiling beef. They're stockpiling the foods if they can get them. And they are looking at bad conditions for our own food. The UN has warned that global food prices could jump 8%, that's already happened, to 20% from here. Why the media is not telling you these things is beyond me. But maybe it's just they're so worried about misinformation and malinformation and conspiracy theories. Last spring, we told you the Secretary of Homeland Security ordered an internal review to identify how best to detect, prevent, and respond to threats related to domestic violent extremism here in America. A component of this was based on online activity. The domestic violent extremist attackers, quoting the DHS now, often radicalize independently by consuming violent extremist material online and mobilize without direction from a violent extremist organization, making detection and disruption difficult. The report that has now been attained said that the extremists exploit a variety of popular social media platforms, smaller websites with targeted audiences, and encrypted chat applications to recruit new adherents. They plan and they rally support for in-person actions. They decide I will tell you that the Great Reset just held a war game a couple of months ago, and they war gamed about mis, dis, and malinformation coming out from people who have audiences about the failing banking system and the trouble with the dollar and the trouble with the failing of the entire financial system. Well, I hope that doesn't happen, but I'm telling you right now, we are being sold a bill of goods, and not by our president. I mean, is our president the one who's getting us into war? I think he's the guy who made it very, very clear by playing the role of Chamberlain. Everything he does, he sends a signal of weakness to all of our enemies, and all of our enemies seem to be, in a way, benefiting from this. We seem to be actually kind of forcing an Axis power to come together. The latest, we told you yesterday, was Saudi Arabia. They are now talking about seriously accepting the yuan instead of dollars for oil. That is the beginning of the end of the petrodollar, which means the world's reserve currency. If that happens, we are looking at a massive lifestyle change. If the world goes off the U.S. world reserve currency, you're looking at becoming Mexico overnight, Venezuela overnight. I know. It could never happen. Do you think the guy who was famous for saying, "You're fired," would ever be president? No, it could never happen. Do you think they would close the entire country and the entire world for something that is a little worse than the flu? I mean, bad, but worse than the flu, but not the Ebola virus? Closing the entire world? Nah, it could never happen. The news that Russia and India are now exploring alternative payment channels. So now India is starting to lean towards the Axis power. What is happening right now is that we are freezing all of the Russian assets. All of the Russian assets are sitting there ready to default. Now, they have to make today $117 million interest payment on some of its bonds. They have loaned money, and so they have to pay $117 million on some of their bonds today. Well, the problem is they have the money, but yes, you have to pay it in U.S. dollars, world reserve currency. So they usually just take their rubles and they pay for them. They use to buy American dollars, and then they take those American dollars and they wire those to the bank. Well, not only can they not change their rubles into dollars now because of us, but we also, because of our banking industry, they have also kicked them off of SWIFT. There's no way to wire anything. So they're stuck, and they're going to default on this loan. We're forcing them to default. If they default on these loans, what happens when you default on a loan? There's a grace period, but then what happens? You lose it. These are their treasuries. These are the things that they have held. Convinced Apple, Audi, the BBC, BMW, Boeing, Bolt, BP, Cadillac, Carlsberg, Chevrolet, Dell.
Don't forget about Pornhub.
Pornhub, PlayStation, and Pornhub. Who convinced these companies? Was it our president? Was it you? Was it backlash from social media that all of these companies worked together almost immediately to say, we're leaving our assets? Did you know our aircraft, American aircraft, that would fly into Russia was left there? And now all of our American companies have lost those aircraft because Putin just said they're ours. What board of director did they even meet on this and have that discussion? We are hurtling towards World War III, and I don't think the American voice is being heard. There's no discussion in Congress that is open. There is no debate on these things. And our corporations are really wielding more public policy and foreign policy than our State Department is. That's saying something, and we should wake up. Because as these debts default over in Russia, as they get into a box, they are building a new world order themselves. And that new world order will tube the American dollar. So what does that mean to you? I'll tell you in 60 seconds. Okay, there are going to be a lot of people that really, truly think that none of this is going to happen because they're systems. I've gone through this dance before. I went through, you remember how long I fought with really very smart people that really had best interest of everybody in heart. In 2006 and 7, I was saying, look, it's going to collapse. There's a housing bubble. It is so clearly obvious. No, we have systems for this. They are not even saying we have systems for this. All of the people that would have said in 2008, don't worry, we have systems, and then that system was completely broken and in the middle of the night, those same people are now saying it on their websites. They are now saying it. They are now saying the banks are. It's a change is coming. And the reason why is once they default, Russia starts to default, a spooky word that should just scare the hell out of you if you lived through the 2008 crash. CDOs and credit default swaps. when they default, the system has to pay the people who had the default swap. Do we have the money, or does that mean even more money has to be printed to bail out those who were holding those things that have to pay them? This is what happened in 2008, and our problem with credit default swaps is bigger than it was in 2008. I don't know if that's the piece or if it's going to be a collection of pieces, but we are going to go to a different currency. And each of us have to decide now. You have to decide now. Am I going to be a part of that currency? Because that currency is programmable. Read it for yourself. Go to the Fed or go to the Treasury. It's programmable, which means it will follow you. They can cancel it anytime. They can say it doesn't work at these stores, et cetera, et cetera. And they're doing that because of modern monetary theory, which I explain in my book, The Great Reset. The second half of modern monetary theory is programmable money. It doesn't work without programmable money. But that means they treat you like the Canadian. This is not. But you will kneel. Your question that you have to answer is, are you willing to kneel or not? Your cash doesn't work anywhere.